Greetings, YouTube. Recently, I read some Harley Quinn comics, specifically some of the things from the New 52. I'm not up to date on all the different storylines and things about from coming out of DC. I don't know which are the latest and which are there aren't. I don't know what year it was written in, but it was the episodes where she gets her first apartment building and the wacky people that live in it and the businesses on the first floor, which was like a freak show and a wax museum or something. Um, and the particular story, one of the issues where she deals with a clone of Popeye was awesome, and another one where she deals with an octogenarian $6 million man was also quite enjoyable. And while it's wacky and entertaining, let's not forget that she's still a mentally ill murderer. And while they've tried to rehabilitate her in a similar way to Deadpool, she's they're both mentally ill murderers. Um, and they did a good job. It had very much had that kind of same vibe that the Deadpool movies did. Um, but it got me thinking about the cinematic Harley Quinn. And specifically, Suicide Squad, where she was included in a tactical team, even though she's just a mentally ill person. Now, she does have some athletic skill. She did go to college because she had got a scholarship for gymnastics, so she most definitely has some prowess when it comes to physicality, and she's picked up some combat skills from hanging around other killers. But why would you include her in a tactical squad, a SWAT team essentially? Why would you do that? There's no reason whatsoever. I realize that she's disposable, but there are lots of disposable criminals you could have found to throw on a team that know how to pull a trigger and know how to be useful in that kind of thing. And then I've seen her own film where she did the Birds of Prey, which I thought was far better than far better than Suicide Squad. And you got to see her in a greater depth, and you got to see her range. And so Margot Robbie did a far better job in that than Suicide Squad. She was very much hamstrung in Suicide Squad. She was very much just there for the male gaze. I mean, very attractive woman. It's not hard to look at her, but yeah, she was very much there just for the male gaze kind of thing. I just think they could have found someone that was as attractive and a hero or a villain that was more useful than Harley Quinn, which got me thinking. I kind of like the character. So why don't I come up with a version of Harley Quinn that would justify her inclusion in a tactical team like the Suicide Squad? So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to keep everything in the cinematic Harley Quinn story exactly the same, right up into the moment that Joker drops her into the chemical bath. Okay? Now, unbeknownst to everybody, Harley Quinn is a mutant. And she could have probably spent the rest of her life with those mutations remaining latent and never coming to the fore if it hadn't been for her encounter with Joker. And just like Wade Wilson's mutation was triggered by extreme stress, being dumped into the chemical bath is what triggers it in Harley. So the initial bath hits, nothing happens immediately, but that begins the ball rolling. It starts the process. And over the next few months, she begins to exhibit metahuman powers. Now, I wanted to make her a solid medium tier hero, so I'm going to give her Luke Cage's abilities, along with, say, a half level of Wolverine's regeneration. So she is strong in the 10-ton range or so, bulletproof, but not completely invulnerable, and has a really good healing factor. And she very rapidly finds herself is being used by the Joker because she is still under his control as his frontline enforcer, as his frontline leg breaker, as his frontline, blitzkrieg attack every time he does a mission. And she's very good at it, and she enjoys it. But over time, just as in the cinematic Harley, she eventually grows disenfranchised with Joker, Mr. J. There is one day that he finally does something that annoys Harley. Now, maybe it's when he beats Robin to death with a crowbar. Maybe it's because he rapes someone, because let's face it, the Joker's not going to be above rape. Or maybe it's because he kicks a hyena. It doesn't matter. Just one day he crosses some line in Harley's head, and she's had enough. So she looks at Joker and says, Puddin', I think we should see other people. Whereupon she pulls his head off. He probably laughed the entire time. She then presents his head to his gang, and who are all also mentally ill, most of whom probably just were quite happy when she declares that the crown prince of crime is dead, long live Queen Harley. And they're right on board with that. And the ones that aren't are soon dead, because none of them are metahumans. So she solidifies her position, taking the same territory he had, but she begins to change her focus. Now, I imagine the Joker, while being incredibly erratic, was also a somewhat conventional crime lord. He wasn't just into blowing up things and killing people for fun. He was also needed a supply of income to pull all this crap off, so he still had to be a crime boss. And you very much get that vibe from Suicide Squad. But she begins to change her focus. So she moves out of leg breaking, moves out of trafficking and things like that. She moves out of a lot of the things that he was doing, and begins to just do the victimless crime things. And as in, she continues the drug dealing, but doesn't kill people to get the deals done. She is the seller of the drugs to the market that exists out there, consenting adults. She makes it very clear. You sell to kids in her territory, and she will feed you alive to her hyenas. She also makes it very clear that nobody hurts kids in her territory. No trafficking, no pedophiles, no underage prostitution. Those are rape victims. They're not underage prostitutes. So all of those things, not allowed in Harley's territory. And she begins to attract people to her territory. She becomes very welcoming to the LGBTQ community because she is, in fact, not straight. I don't know how she would define herself, either as bi or pan or what, but she's not straight. And she's welcoming to all of them. And it's very quickly known you don't go after gay people or trans people in Harley's territory. Or again, she will feed you alive to her hyenas. And she is dangerous, but she provides legitimate protection for the people that live in her territory. She is she begins to take up the mantle of the vigilante that she does in some of the comics that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, where she has a squad of acolytes who all want to help her protect the citizens. And she does that. She goes after the corrupt politicians and businessmen. And she begins to make her territory be a safe haven for runaways and for sex workers and for people that just want to do drugs and be left alone. They're not looking to cause any problems. And when Batman isn't happy that she's there, he's got much bigger fish to fry. She is legitimately keeping people safe. So she's on the back burner as far as he's concerned. He's got other stuff to do. Now, I think this Harley is far more interesting because she has all of the other characteristics that Harley Quinn has. She's smart. She's just as mentally ill. She's just as nutty. But she's also a true metahuman, which means that if she ever has to go up against Batman or the other heroes or other villains, she's got an edge. She just doesn't have a baseball bat and nothing else, or a wacky plan. No, she's bulletproof. She can punch a hole through the wall. She can regrow a limb if it gets blown off. She's dangerous. So I think Super Harley is a far more interesting character. So let's talk about how you might revamp Harley Quinn. And if you don't think Harley Quinn needs to be revamped, tell me why. I want to hear your story. So this has been the, I guess, the latest episode of my comic talk. This is a little bit more meta. I'm not talking about a specific comic in this particular episode. But yeah, let's talk about Harley Quinn and how we might change her character to make her more interesting, or at least a little more survivable.